Hi, I'm Ruby from Stained Glass Creations by Ruby. Welcome to the studio. Today we're going to do a short video on foiling techniques. When you're doing a Tiffany stained glass panel, then your foiling becomes very important because it's a strength in your panel. There's several different ways to foil. I like foiling manually. Several people like to have different tools to help foiling. I find my fingers do the best job. I have a panel that's ready to go. And as you can see, on this panel, my pieces are all fit in. They fit in my grid. And what's going to happen is one piece at a time we're going to foil it. But every time we add foil to a panel, then it snugs up my pieces. And what we may have to do is a little bit more grinding, or we're going to have to loosen our frame a little bit so that we can get the pieces back in. So we're going to start with the bottom of the panel. I'm going to take one rail out. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that there's no dust on our pieces of glass, because you want your foil to be difficult to remove once you've put it on. If your foil comes off easily, then it wasn't applied properly and it has no strength. I like foiling with 3/16 foil. I like small, neat little solder lines. The smaller your foil, the smaller your solder lines. The bigger your foil, the bigger your solder lines. So a lot of people call this wrapping. So we're going to wrap this piece of glass in copper foil. I'm using black back for this one. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to aim your foil so that it is 50% on both sides of your glass. And you want that as much as possible because it's going to affect your solder lines. So we go all the way around. I push it down as I go along so that I don't wrinkle my foil. And up one side. Nice square corners. I always foil coming towards me because I can see better, and I can better aim that I've got my foil 50% on both sides. So then once it's wrapped, we're going to keep going here. I probably should have started with a slightly smaller piece of glass, but actually this is a good example because it has curves in it and straight lines. A lot of people find foiling curves difficult because your foil has a tendency to want to break itself in the curves, and usually that's because it wasn't put on right. If you put it on and you press it down as you go along, you should be able to bend your foil around your curve without any breaks. That one's not half and half. There we go. And go up around the other side. And so when we start doing this to all our pieces, every once in a while we're going to find that even though the pieces fit nice now, they're going to be too snug to fit them back in the panel once they're foiled. So you want your pieces to drop into place after they're foiled like a good jigsaw puzzle. You don't want to force the pieces, you just want to be able to lay them down, give it a gentle pat, and it should fit into place. If you're separating your pieces or forcing it down, then your pieces are too tight. And though it may not create any issues in your panel, what might happen is if your pieces are too tight, when you go to solder, you're heating the foil, you're heating the glass a little bit, and the glass is trying and the foil is trying to expand just a little bit. And sometimes what will happen is your piece of glass will crack. And if you're in the middle of soldering and you have a broken piece of glass, and there's no fun and there's no easy way to repair it. So quite often then we have to live with a piece of broken glass in our panel, or we have to tear a good section of it apart in order to be able to fix that. So what we're going to do now that this one is wrapped, we're going to burnish the foil. And what that means is we want to take out all of the air bubbles. You can see that there's air bubbles there. And what we want to do with this little burnishing tool is we just want to rub it. Because if you ever had to unwrap this piece of glass, you want it to be difficult to unwrap. That means that you wrapped it properly, it has a lot of strength, and it won't come apart. If you can easily tear your foil off, then it wasn't on correct to begin with, and you've taken away a lot of the strength on your panel. So, and what you do to one piece of glass, you want to do to all, and what you do to one side of your glass, you want to do to both sides. So we're going to go all the way around, and it isn't a matter of pushing hard, it's just a matter of a nice firm rub. And as you can see, all the little wrinkles come out of my foil, and that's what we're looking to achieve. So I can see that here it's wrinkled again, and by giving it some back and forth motion, it smooths it out. So now we want to do the same thing on the sides. So you want to pull gently towards the inside of your glass. You want to be careful, because if you didn't grind the edge of your glass, then you can tear your foil. And when you go to solder, if you don't have a piece of foil, you're not going to have any solder, because your solder is only going to stay on your foil. So you're going to drop solder all over your panel, all over your glass, it won't matter. The only place that your solder is going to stay is on your foil. So you want to make sure that your foil is nice and secure. So up one side. And now that I've done that side, what you do to one side, you want to go do on the other side. There we go, all the way around. There we go. There we go. So that's the first piece that's wrapped. So when we put this one back down in the panel, that fit in fairly nice. I didn't have to move any of my pieces. I'm going to put my bottom rail back in because I want to keep my panel square. This panel is going to be finished with a zinc cane, and I want to make sure that it stays square, otherwise I'll have issues putting my cane on. So then as you do this, you just continue to your next piece. When I test this piece, it goes in, there's a little bit of wiggle room on this piece, so I should be able to foil this one without issue. Just going to grab a towel here, without issue, and be able to put it in my panel with no additional grinding. And yes, there's marker lines in that. A lot of that is going to be hidden, and the ones that aren't hidden, like here, are going to get washed off when I clean my piece. So it isn't something that I spend a lot of time on when I'm working my panel, because I know I'm going to have to wash my panel a couple of times yet before I'm done. If I'm using silver marker, then I have a tendency every once in a while to wash those pieces, because I find the silver marker is hard to get off on some manufacturer's glass. But if I'm working with black Sharpie markers, then I don't pay attention to it until I'm ready to wash my panel for patina after I've done the soldering. So we're going to wrap this second piece just to show you what they look like together. And once again, as I go around, I push my foil down so I don't wrinkle it. And I want to make sure that it's down well on my curve before I start pushing down so that it doesn't split the foil. And quite often when you're foiling, because you've used different thicknesses of glass in your panel, and you want to keep the illusion of having the same width for all your solder lines, you may end up using several sizes of foil. I find that the Wishma glass and the Kokomo glass and the Spectrum glass have a lot of the same thicknesses. Euroboro Bullseye is a thicker glass. So in order to get the same illusion as the 3/16 on those glass, I'll use a wider foil. I'll use 732 or wider, so that when I finish foiling and burnishing the piece, then it's got the same dimensions, which becomes important. So now we're almost done with his little paw. There we go. And now this piece should fit in without much attempt. There we go. But now I'm finding the body's starting to get tighter. So by the time I foil this second paw and these little pieces, my body's going to have pushed up so tight that I'm probably going to have to give it just a little bit of grinding at the top here in order to be able to continue. But that's the basics of foiling your panel. You want your foil lines to be nice and even. You want them close together. And what we'll do is we'll continue this demonstration with the soldering portion of it once I finish foiling the panel. So that's our 5-minute update on foiling techniques for today. Hope you've enjoyed it. Come back and see us on our next video. We'll be soldering the panel with the next video. Thank you.